Okay, so I'm gonna start part 3 of the Transmaxxing Manifesto. I've read 25 pages of this bullshit, and I've got 20 more to go because the whole thing is like 45 pages. So, gonna get started. Okay, Leslie's story. Although Leslie was born male, she began to try to pass as a female, initially by tucking, using a gaff device that hides the moose knuckle. I don't know what that is. Cleavage enhancement, hip and buttock padding, cross-dressing, and using breast prostheses. Later, by going through a physical transition, Leslie felt that her penis and balls were useless body parts that served no purpose. Mental. The pointlessness of her male genitalia is what triggered gender dysphoria in her. Leslie did this because she struggled to gain the attention of women. She believed it wouldn't be too difficult to change gender identity, as she already had a small frame and had minimal secondary sexual characteristics. She specifically said that being male sucked because of the prolonged sexlessness. Yeah, that does suck, but you know what? You get fucking used to it. You have to get used to your own fucking company. That's just the way it is. She also said that if she had not altered her gender identity, the trauma of inceldom was so bad, she considered going to Belgium or Switzerland, as those two countries are considered the easiest places for entering a mercy killing or suicide tourism arrangement. In Leslie's words, the research they had done suggested both countries were considered the euthanasia capitals of the Western world. Transitioning made Leslie change her mind. Wasting all that money just to kill yourself. Psst. She began to understand why prostitution is usually a one-way street of men buying sex from women, not the other way around. It's because of the mismatch in demand, Leslie posited. Becoming a woman, she learned firsthand that the ease of access to sex was as different as night and day between men and women. Women are stupendously privileged in this regard, as Leslie soon found out. And yet women are the ones that are trafficked way more than men for prostitution. Think about that. Although men can be trafficked too for that purpose, but usually it's women. Leslie decided to transition because she wanted to experience the female-specific privilege for herself. After changing gender identity, she had no difficulties attracting partners of either sex. Leslie was no longer lonely. You guys talk about female privilege, and yet you specifically stated that a bunch of men are transitioning just so that they can compete against women in sports because they're naturally stronger and faster than even the best female athletes, generally speaking. So these middling or even failing male athletes, they can't compete against other male athletes, but they can compete against the best female athletes and outcompete them. How's that for fucking privilege? After changing gender identity, she had no difficulties attracting partners of either sex. Leslie was no longer lonely. She specifically said and emphasized that she would never have transitioned had it not been for the inexhaustibility of male inceldom. Leslie felt that her earlier traits as a male, which made her repulsive or off-putting to potential suitors, such as shyness and awkwardness, suddenly were seen as tenable traits in the dating scene. Leslie's transition, according to her email, has been successful, and she now happily lives as an allosexual, sex-having, passing trans woman. According to Leslie, from her tweens to her teens and during her early adulthood, she was completely a cisgender man. Only once Leslie researched their tri-scenarian years did they begin doubting the viability of their gender with regards to prolonged loneliness, thus subsequently deciding that transitioning to a woman was the right choice. You're going to end up alone eventually either way. Most males are already obsolete. Fuck you. With the technological advancement, the majority of males are becoming increasingly useless and even a burden on society as a whole. Their bodies are no longer needed for physical work, and males as a group do not have any major mental advantages over females. And yet, any man who fully transitions to female, if they get rid of their cock and balls, then they're even more useless than they already were because they can no longer procreate. And women who transition from male to female can't procreate either unless they keep all their sex organs, like their ovaries, their womb, their vagina and stuff. And then they can't call themselves a man because men can't get fucking pregnant. Reproduction. Most males are genetically ill-suited for reproduction, and 1% of the male population is enough to impregnate all females that want kids. The fact that most males reproduce today is due to culture, and this ends up ruining upcoming generations genetically. Fuck you, asshole. It's not genetics that is ruining kids. It's the culture. Genetics only plays a small part in that. Most males do not do work that cannot be done by females. I don't see... While it's true that there are many men who don't want to do the hard physical labor that was done in the past, you don't see any women today doing the hard physical labor that men are still doing. Like, there are hardly any women doing the oil drilling or the mining or the heavy lifting that many men still do. Most males do not do work that cannot be done by females. There are a few areas where males are difficult to replace, but less than 5% of the male population is needed to do these jobs. Why pay a male to do a job when you can have a machine do the job cheaper and better? Well, that job isn't being done by a woman either, asshole. So, that makes women obsolete too, fucktard. A lot of males today are not even net taxpayers. They end up using more resources from the government than they provide in taxes. And yet, that's A-okay for women to do, isn't it? Fucking dipshit. Many males find themselves alone without any real purpose to life. They just exist, and when they die, nobody will miss them. Sex. Males have far higher sex drive than females, partly due to high testosterone. If males on average want sex once per day, while females want it once per week, 85% of males would be obsolete when it comes to sex if it wasn't for the monogamy norm, which may be collapsing as I write this. There are a number of options. Many of these do not properly replace the male need for a female, and none of them allow for reproduction from best to worst. Fucking asshole. Medical transition from male to female? Nope. Porn, masturbation, sex toys, escorts, going gay. You put going gay below escorts and porn. Zoophilia, raping females, suicide. Option 2 and 3 and 6 does not offer any real validation. Not sure about 4 and 5. Escorts are expensive and in many areas, well, so is transitioning, dipshit. And you even mentioned that many times the doctors don't even do it right. Experts are expensive, and in many areas, buying sex isn't legal, and you may put yourself in legal danger by using these services. Most males prefer human females, and thus 4 and 5 are not a good option for most people. Zoophilia it's against the law in a lot of countries. If we do not want males to do 4 to 7, we should encourage option 1 to 3. Not doing so would be highly irrational. Well, no one's saying that they can't do porn. The biggest issue with solution 1 is that it stops being a good option as you get older. It's great when you are young, 12 to 23 mostly. You advocate this for kids, dipshit. Fuck you. But at 30 it will be very difficult to ever pass, and you may not become that attractive to a trans woman. Well, I'm already past the limit then. But there are still plenty of guys older than me who are doing this. You even had their stories in here. Let's see. Involuntary celibacy. Was short for involuntary celibate, but it's not clear when it's involuntary and what counts as celibacy. What if you hire an escort? Well, if you hire an escort, then you're no longer celibate. The word incel is also very problematic since a lot of self-identified incels have very toxic views. We are still willing to help individuals who hold these problematic beliefs. It is possible that many of them would change their personalities for the better after correcting their hormones, higher estrogen, lower testosterone. In a lot of cases, males that are unsuccessful sexually have not yet developed toxic views associated with incels, and then if they transition in time, they will remain nice people instead of becoming hateful. I guess that didn't happen to you because just reading this makes me hate you very much. Your disdain is just like oozing off of this. Your disdain for yourself, your disdain for other men, your disdain for women. You just hate everybody. And yet you talk about how this has improved your life. You don't need to be a kissless virgin to benefit from medical transition. How functional your sex life is as a male is just one of the factors to consider. How much sex do you want? How much sex did you actually get? How was the quality of the sex you got? None of that fucking matters, okay? I'm not getting sex. I haven't had sex in a long time. I did have some good fooling around moments with some girls. How much did the sex cost you? I don't pay. Direct and indirect expenses. Significant improvement from plastic surgery is rare when it's one on males, and it will not fix any of the mental issues incels often suffer from. There is no surgery for the brain. Anybody who wants to transition is fucking mental. That's all there is to it. Dysfunctional sex life can have other origins that simply being unable to attract a partner you like for sex. Some people find out that they cannot properly enjoy the sex when they are male. And they'll find out that they can't properly enjoy the sex after they, quote, transition. Sexual reasons to transition are valid. No, they're not. Sex is a basic human need, and if you cannot have good sex life because you are male, you need to consider medical transition as a solution. Yeah, I'd rather just jack off. Not being sexually satisfied is bad for your mental health. It's even bad for your physical health. You not being sexually satisfied as a male can be due to several factors. Failure to attract females. There's no such thing as trans females. Just females. They're either biological females or they're biological males. Testosterone eroding your orgasms. Only a single weak orgasm from penile stimulation. Well, you can train yourself to, like, hold on to your erection before you orgasm. And it's called edging. So you can make it stronger if you know how to do it. You not properly enjoying sex and your body looks like a disgusting male. Okay, so if you have a disgusting body, then most people can do something about that. They can work out, okay? Because most of the time they're just fat and unhygienic. They're actually not ugly physically. Although even if you are ugly physically, you can still do something about it. Why suffer as a male when you can be a cute girl? If you get aroused by the thought or image of yourself as a male, you should absolutely consider transition just for sexual reasons, even if you don't have any other form of gender dysphoria. Nope. Even the idea of, like, looking at like a woman that looks like me, except she's female, and yes, that would be arousing. I'm not going to transition. Transition due to mental illness. First, we need to recognize that a diagnosis of a mental disorder is not evidence of anything being wrong with the brain. The disorders outlined in DSM-5 are not scientific, and no objective test is done prior to giving a diagnosis. Because of that, we cannot blame gender dysphoria on things like autism when there isn't any objective test to determine if someone actually suffers from autism, and even if we would discover it's such a test, which cannot exist since the order itself isn't valid as used now, it would be difficult to establish a casual relationship. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. People who are diagnosed with narcissism are more likely to transition. Okay, so you're probably a narcissist. You just outed yourself. Being cis can be a mental illness. Fuck you, dude. Being unwilling to transition, even though it would be beneficial for you, is a mental illness since it significantly affects your life in a negative manner. Paying all that money to transition, knowing that most doctors would fuck the operation up, and knowing that even if they didn't fuck it up and the operation was successful, I'd never be a real woman anyway, that is not mental illness. It's not clear why so many people are so unwilling to transition, even though they would clearly benefit from it. One explanation for this is people having their gender as an important part of their identity, and then changing your sex becomes almost unthinkable. Well, being trans is an important part of your identity now, isn't it? Asshole. The degeneracy factor. Okay, so you're calling cisgendered gay men degenerates, even though you're transitioning from male to female, and you're not even fully transitioning, mind you. You're keeping your dick and balls, but you're calling them degenerates. What does that make you? You're fucking hypocrite. You're a fucking liar. Let's see. Because you are keeping your cock and balls, and you're advocating lying to cisgendered straight men just so that you can get money and stuff from them. Fucking douchebag. This degeneracy factor explains why they are more likely to transition. It's not like they have more gender issues than the average male. The opposite is probably true. If they transition early, their dating pool will widen and increase in attractiveness due to the female dating advantage and the fact that the gay dating male pool is more limited in numbers. One risk is autoandrophilia. If they are directly attracted to men, they might prefer having a male body. It's likely that these individuals mostly do not transition in the first place. Autoandrophilia could be a reason for why many gay males with gender issues desist at puberty. They start finding male bodies, including their own, sexually attractive. If you are rejected constantly by straight guys because you are male, that may cause body dysphoria, and there is no denying that many of these guys would be willing to have sex with you if you actually transitioned. Yeah, but only if they don't know that you're a guy. If they find out, they're probably going to kick your ass. A lot of guys would do that. Most of them aren't like that one guy that was mentioned earlier who had no problem having camera sex with a trans woman. If you have internalized homophobia, you might feel like it's wrong for you to have sex with men when you are male yourself. It's also likely that many gay males who want to transition lie about having gender dysphoria to be viewed as valid. They might also lie to themselves. If a gay male is less attractive, he might view him not finding himself attractive as dysphoria, and thus transition. Once female, she will get a lot of male attention and validation, and thus feel better about her body. Failed heterosexual males often have no real chance of reproduction, and this will make it more prone to transitioning since they're about to die childless anyway. If you instead have a wife and want to have children, you might instead repress despite severe gender dysphoria. If you have a wife you are happy with, you might feel like it's wrong for you to transition and ruin a relationship if it's working. Even if your wife claims to support your transition, she might still end up leaving you. If you do because she is simply not attracted to females. Well, duh. If you instead are a loser male with no real purpose in life, there isn't any wife that would leave if you decide to become a girl, and you might not have any friends to lose either. Thus, we can expect that people are less likely to depress when their lives are really bad as males. Jesus. How to do hormone replacement therapy. First off, you need to raise your estrogen levels. There are several options for this, 0 to 4. If you take estradiol orally, it's better to spread it out over the day, 2 or 3 times a day, instead of taking it all at once, especially at higher dosages. You do not need official prescriptions to start on hormones in most countries. Typically, it's easy and safe to simply buy it at an online store. Okay. Wow, look at that. Okay. Estradiol siphonate injections. These are hard to get your hands on, but might be your best option after 6 to 24 months. This dosage gives average blood estradiol level as from oral estradiol, about 20 milligrams a day, but is much less expensive, 35 times less expensive than the cheapest estradiol pills. This dosage is high enough to suppress testosterone production by testicles completely without anti-androgens. I'm not going to read all that. Oral estradiol is stronger than estradiol valerate, so the dosage has to be about 30% lower. You probably shouldn't combine nicotine with estradiol, since then it might become far less effective. Okay. Unfortunately, gozerolin acetate, which also goes by the names of Lupron, Zoladex, is expensive and difficult to get if you do not have an official prescription. It's unclear if it's actually better than the bicalutamide, despite being significantly more expensive. Breast growth. Vandenberg, 2006, found a non-monotonic responsive size of breasts developed as a function of the dose of exogenous estrogen administered to ovary-ectomized female mice. Size of breasts was smaller in mice administered the highest dose of estradiol than mice administered an intermediate dose. The optimum dose for breast growth in humans cannot be extrapolated from this study because metabolism of pharmaceuticals does not scale linearly with body mass, and the growth of the human body is slower than that of mice. This result suggests the hypothesis that to maximize breast growth in transsex people, it can be appropriate to use a lower dose of the estrogen or increase the dose slowly. However, many HRT regimes rely on the estrogen to suppress endogenous androgens. Therefore, starting with the low dose of an estrogen potentially risks some degree of continued masculinization and suboptimal feminization. There is also some anecdotal support for this, but having to use an anti-androgen is far from ideal since these are expensive and come with side effects. Dr. Willpower anecdotally observed that people had better results starting on oral estradiol. It's probably because estrone makes estradiol less potent, but Willpower thinks estrone is... What the hell? You may want to take a micro-ionized oral progesterone if you want... Okay. These are just drug... Okay. This study shows that testosterone had an enhancing and not quickly reversible effect on spatial ability performance, but no deteriorating effect on verbal fluency in adult women. In contrast, anti-androgen treatment in combination with estrogen therapy had no decline in effect on spatial ability, nor an enhancing effect on verbal fluency in adult men. Some people may get aroused at the thought of becoming physically and emotionally weak, and thus tell themselves that they are getting dumber when they are not. Other individuals were mentally weak long before they started on hormones. They transition because they cannot really make it as males. The difficulty will keep going up. Okay, so were you mentally weak? Is that why you transitioned? Fucking dipshit. You can keep doing it, exercise, or complement your HRT. Okay. The biggest risk is thrombosis, and this is reduced almost nothing if you do not do oral administration. It's not possible to overdose on HRT. Nobody has died from injecting too much estrogen. Sure. But it can have other serious negative consequences. Should you emulate female puberty? Okay. This, however, does not mean emulating cis female puberty is ideal. Thus, is ideal unless you specifically want to experience something similar to what cis females go through, requiring you want to start early. There are plenty of cis females with small breasts, and you probably do not want that. We can do better than what's natural. If your estradiol dosage is low, then it will be harder to suppress testosterone. If you are still able to successfully suppress your testosterone levels, such as via gonadotropin releasing hormone antagonist, your health may suffer because you didn't replace the missing testosterone with estrogen. Stop and go method. The effect of hormones will lessen over time as your receptors become desensitized. One strategy for more breast broth is to abruptly stop estrogen for some time to resensitize your receptors. This is, of course, very experimental, but some people have had good results with it. A trans female wrote, I am 33 years old, started HRT at 29, and I live in Germany. My body has been below average with not much fat. This is because of my mother, who is very thin too. On June 21st, 2017, I started HRT with 2 milligrams of Estreva gel per day. For 3 months, I keep this regimen until I change to 3 milligrams. My testosterone has been very low, almost not measurable, as my blood test showed. I saw quite some changes, but my breasts were very small, almost non-existent. So I spoke with my gynecologist and asked him if raising would be an option for this problem. I even read about progesterone. Maybe this might help with it. He told me to take some E2 dosage and use 100 milligrams P4 oral every night. I did it as he told me and nothing really happened. After 2 months, my breasts started to look pointy like a cone. They haven't changed a lot for the next 2 years. I changed my regimen and dosages a lot, but always without an AA. I made up my mind that I would need augmentation for them. My last hope has been a post where someone wrote that she stopped HRT for a whole month, but with an AA as suppressor for remasculization. I wrote with her in private, and she told me her way in steps. After a week, I made my preparations and stopped from 1 milligram oral E2 to 0. At first, I had the feeling my body changes and the female shape became stronger, and that my HRT had been blocked way my too much E2. But without the help of an AA, I saw my light body hair become a little darker and thicker again. This is why I asked my gynecologist for an AA. At first, he gave me drospirenone, which did nothing in particular. After some time, he finally prescribed me cyproterone acetate, 10 milligrams, which stopped everything in terms of remasculization. Then I started E2 again with 1 milligram per day. I felt some hot flashes in the night at the start, but it was not a true problem. But then happened something I had never imagined. I started to produce milk as my breasts grew larger. How my breasts are very beautiful and rounded themselves up, and I produce a little milk. The amount grew with every day I milked myself, and the enlargement of the breasts is still not finished. I surely read that galactorrhea is quite common after interrupting HRT, and in most terms, it is not a bad sign, but this experience could save me from a breast augmentation, and maybe there is someone outside who asked herself how to lactate. Okay, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay, well, I got 5 pages left. Okay, I'm gonna quit for now. This is the 3rd part. I'll do the last 5 pages tomorrow. So, okay, just got up to page 40 of the Transmaxxing Manifesto. I've got 5 pages left, so I'll finish those tomorrow. Oh my god, this is fucking torture. Whoever wrote this is not a good writer at all. They contradict, I've said this before, they contradict themselves, like, frequently. They insult other members of the LGBTQ community. They literally just called cisgendered gay men degenerate, and they themselves are fucking degenerates. They're a fucking degenerate because, like I said, they advocate lying to cisgendered straight men and getting them to give them money and stuff for sex, and then dumping them and divorcing them, etc., etc. which is what biological women are doing too. But the fact that men are doing this, becoming fake females to dupe other men, fucking disgusts me.